My ex-wife looked at me, smiled, and said, "You'll never become the kind of man anyone could be proud of." The room erupted in laughter, but I didn't say a word. I simply adjusted my old suit and quietly looked toward the hotel entrance. A few seconds later, several black luxury cars arrived, and a group of executives walked straight past everyone, stopping right in front of me. What happened next left my ex-wife frozen in shock. Stay until the end of this story, because the man everyone called a failure was about to change their lives forever. My ex didn't know the man she called a failure had become the billionaire buying her company. You'll never become the kind of man a woman can be proud of. Vanessa Cole did not lower her voice when she said it. The sentence crossed the long dining table beneath the crystal chandeliers of the Royal Crescent Hotel and settled among the silverware, untouched desserts, and expensive watches. For one suspended moment, the private dining room became silent. Then a man near the window coughed into his napkin to hide a smile. Someone else looked down at his wineglass. Vanessa's father leaned back in his chair as though he had been waiting years for his daughter to finally say aloud what he believed everyone already knew. Daniel Cole sat beside her in a dark jacket he had owned since their wedding. The left cuff had been repaired twice. The fabric had faded where it rubbed against the desk at the small logistics office where he worked. Vanessa had noticed it while they were getting ready. "Couldn't you have bought something new?" she had asked. "You said the dinner was tonight. I told you 3 weeks ago. You also said we needed to save for your conference." She had looked at him through the mirror, already fastening her diamond earrings. "Just try not to embarrass me." Now she was doing the embarrassing for both of them. Daniel looked down at his plate. The sauce had cooled into a thin skin. Beyond the closed doors, a violin played in the hotel lobby, soft and elegant and completely indifferent. Vanessa lifted her champagne glass. "I'm 32, she continued. "I'm tired of pretending love is enough. I'm tired of paying half the rent while my husband spends every night working on some imaginary company that never makes a dollar." A few people laughed, not loudly. That made it worse. Daniel kept his hands folded beneath the table, his wedding ring pressed against his skin. On Vanessa's other side sat Adrian Cross, a real estate investor whose photograph often appeared in business magazines. His tuxedo fit perfectly. His smile had the quiet confidence of someone who had never been forced to explain his value. "You deserve a life that reflects your potential," Adrian said. Vanessa turned toward him with a softness she had not shown Daniel in months. Her mother reached for her wine. Her father nodded once. The judgment had already been delivered. Daniel raised his eyes and looked at the woman he had married 7 years earlier in a courthouse during a rainstorm. She had worn a cream-colored dress bought on clearance and laughed when water soaked through her shoes. They had eaten sandwiches beneath the courthouse steps because the restaurant Daniel had reserved lost their booking. Vanessa had held his face in both hands and said, "We'll build everything together." He wondered when together had become something she was ashamed of. Vanessa reached into her handbag. The movement was too precise to be spontaneous. She placed a white envelope beside Daniel's plate. Its corner touched his fork. "I've already spoken to an attorney." The violin continued beyond the walls. Daniel stared at the envelope. Divorce papers. He had imagined many endings to their marriage during the previous year. Quiet conversations in the kitchen. Tears. Anger. Perhaps one final attempt at honesty. He had not imagined a performance beneath a chandelier. Vanessa removed her wedding ring. The diamond was small. Daniel had spent 14 months paying for it. She placed it on the bread plate between them. The metal made a faint sound against the porcelain. That sound remained with him longer than her words. "I don't want to wake up at 40 and realize I wasted my life waiting for you to become someone." Daniel looked at the ring, then the envelope, then Vanessa. There was anger somewhere inside him, but it had sunk too deep to reach his face. "What do you want me to say?" he asked. Vanessa seemed disappointed by his calmness. "You could start by admitting I'm right." Daniel picked up the envelope. He did not open it. Across the table, Adrian watched him with the detached curiosity of a man observing an employee being dismissed. Daniel rose. The legs of his chair moved quietly across the carpet. Vanessa's father smiled. "Running away again?" Daniel buttoned his jacket. "No," he placed his napkin beside the cold plate. "I'm leaving before I say something. I'll have to carry longer than this marriage." For half a second, something uncertain crossed Vanessa's face. Then she lifted her chin. "That's always been your problem. You think silence makes you dignified." Daniel glanced once more at the ring beneath the chandelier. "No," he said. "Silence just keeps me from becoming cruel." He walked toward the doors. No one stopped him. Outside, rain covered the city in silver. Daniel stood beneath the hotel awning while black cars moved along the street. Through the glass behind him, he could still see the dinner guests. Vanessa was speaking to Adrian. Adrian leaned closer. Someone refilled her glass. Daniel opened the envelope. Yellow tabs marked every place he was expected to sign. Vanessa's signature waited at the bottom of the last page. Confident. Finished. A drop of rain struck the paper. Then another. Daniel folded the documents carefully and placed them inside his jacket. 3 weeks later, he moved into an apartment above a closed laundromat on the east side of the city. The bedroom window faced a brick wall. The radiator clicked through the night, but produced little heat. The refrigerator hummed louder than the traffic, and the kitchen table leaned to one side because one leg was shorter than the others. There was only one chair. Daniel found it beside a dumpster and carried it up 4 flights of stairs. On his first evening there, he ate cold noodles from a paper container while sitting before an old laptop. The signed divorce papers lay beside him. Vanessa kept the apartment they had shared. She kept the furniture, the framed wedding photographs, and the espresso machine Daniel had bought her after saving for 6 months. He took 3 shirts, 2 suits, a box of books, and a hard drive containing years of work she had called a fantasy. At midnight, his phone lit up. For one irrational second, his heart lifted. It was not Vanessa. A former colleague had posted a photograph from a charity gala. Vanessa stood beside Adrian Cross, one hand resting on his arm. She wore the green dress Daniel had once told her made her look like sunlight through glass. The caption read, "Some people enter your life to remind you what you deserve." Daniel looked at the image until the screen dimmed. Then he turned the phone face down. He did not call her. He did not ask whether the relationship with Adrian had begun before the divorce. He did not post a bitter message. He did not tell their friends how many weekends he had worked so Vanessa could complete her executive degree, or how he had rejected a technology program in another city because she wanted to remain close to her family. Those truths would not restore anything. They would only make his pain visible to people who had already chosen not to see him. Daniel opened the laptop. Blue-white light filled the room. On the screen was the unfinished structure of a software platform called Northstar. The concept was simple enough to explain and difficult enough to build. A logistics network capable of predicting supply chain disruptions before they happened. Daniel had first imagined it while working nights in a warehouse. He watched companies lose millions because information always arrived too late. A storm had already closed the highway. A port strike had already trapped the cargo. A supplier had already failed. A hospital had already run short of medicine. Northstar would gather fragments from thousands of sources and transform them into decisions. Move the shipment. Change the supplier. Reroute the truck. Protect the inventory before the danger arrived. Years earlier, Daniel had explained the idea to Vanessa over dinner. By the end, she had checked her phone 6 times. "Real companies don't buy dreams," she said. The memory returned now, sharp but strangely useful. Daniel placed both hands on the keyboard. Outside, rain tapped against the fire escape. He began to work. His days split into 2 separate lives. From 8 in the morning until 6 in the evening, he answered shipping complaints at Brighton Freight, where his manager corrected his emails and called him Danny. At 7, he ate whatever was cheapest. At 8, Northstar came alive. Lines of code. System failures. Coffee. Silence. At 2 in the morning, Daniel sometimes stood at the window and looked at the brick wall across the alley. He wondered whether Vanessa was asleep. Beside Adrian, he wondered whether she ever remembered the courthouse rain. Then he returned to the screen. Pain became a schedule. Grief became repetition. Every hour he refused to collapse became an invisible brick in something no one else could yet see. One night, his laptop overheated and shut down before he had saved 6 hours of work. Daniel sat motionless in the dark. The room smelled of dust and burned circuitry. He pressed the power button. Nothing. He tried again. Still nothing. For several minutes, he listened to the refrigerator hum. Then he covered his face with both hands. It was the first time he cried after the divorce. Not when Vanessa removed her ring. Not when he signed the papers. Not when he saw the photograph of her with Adrian. He cried because the black screen looked like proof that she had been right. Perhaps he had mistaken stubbornness for talent. Perhaps Northstar was only an elaborate way to avoid admitting that he was ordinary. His shoulders shook once. Then again. When the tears stopped, he picked up the laptop, carried it downstairs, and walked 6 blocks through freezing rain to a repair shop that opened at dawn. The owner, an older woman named Evelyn Park, unlocked the door while he waited beneath the awning. "You're early," she said. "My computer died." She looked at his wet clothes. "Seems serious." "It is." Evelyn examined the laptop. "This machine belongs in a museum. It's all I have." She glanced at him, then at the water dripping from his sleeves. "Come back tonight. I can't afford a full repair." "I didn't ask what you could afford." That evening, the laptop worked again. Evelyn had also installed more memory. When Daniel protested, she waved him away. Build whatever kept you walking through that rain. Years later, when reporters asked Daniel who had first invested in Northstar, they expected the name of a venture capitalist. He always gave them Evelyn Parks. Not because she had given him money, because at the lowest point of his life, she treated his unfinished dream as though it deserved to survive. Vanessa believed Daniel lacked ambition. What she never understood was that his ambition had not been absent. It had been redirected. During their marriage, Daniel had quietly postponed himself. When Vanessa wanted to complete her degree, he worked weekends. When she needed professional clothes for interviews, he delayed replacing his car. When she accepted a junior position at Caldwell Urban Group, Daniel celebrated with takeout and a bottle of wine they could barely afford. His own opportunity arrived 6 months later. A technology incubator in Seattle offered him a place in a development program. The acceptance email remained open on his screen for nearly an hour. Vanessa had just received a promotion. She said relocating would destroy her career. Daniel declined the offer the next morning. He never told her how long his hand hovered above the button. Years later, she remembered only that he had stayed in the same ordinary job. She did not remember the door he had closed so she could walk through hers. Now there was no one left to place before himself. The realization frightened him at first. Then it freed him. Daniel left Brighton Freight after his manager discovered he was developing software and suggested that anything created while employed by the company belonged to the company. Daniel had never used company equipment, but the accusation clarified what fear had delayed. He resigned on a Tuesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, he had rented a narrow office above a bakery. The carpet smelled of sugar and old rain. There were no private rooms, only 4 desks and 1 window overlooking an alley filled with delivery bicycles. Daniel hired 3 people. Maya Ortiz, a data scientist rejected by larger companies because she had no university degree. Theo Grant, a systems engineer who wore headphones even when nothing was playing. And Evelyn's son, Lucas Park, who had recently completed military service and understood transportation networks better than most consultants. On their first morning, Daniel stood before a clean whiteboard with a marker in his hand. The company bank account contained enough money for 7 weeks. "We don't have the best office," he said. Theo looked at the ceiling stain. "That is difficult to dispute." Maya smiled. "We don't have a famous name." Daniel continued. "We don't have investors. We don't have time to waste pretending failure is impossible." He wrote 1 word on the board. "Earlier." Our entire company exists to give people one thing. The truth earlier. The bakery machines vibrated beneath their feet. If a hospital knows a medical shipment will be delayed before the truck leaves the warehouse, it can find another route. If a supplier knows a bridge will close tomorrow, it can move tonight. Information is only valuable if it arrives before regret. Nobody spoke. Then Maya opened her laptop. "Where do we start?" Daniel looked at the empty board. "With the part everyone says can't be done." The first year was brutal. Northstar's system crashed during its initial demonstration. A potential client laughed and asked whether Daniel had built it in his bedroom. Another company copied part of their proposal and stopped returning calls. Payroll arrived twice with less than $20 remaining in the account. Daniel sold his car. For 6 months, he walked to work before sunrise. One February morning, he found Maya asleep beneath her desk with a coat folded beneath her head. He covered her with his jacket and continued testing the system alone. At 6, she woke to the smell of coffee. "You should go home sometimes," she said. "So should you." I asked first. Daniel watched snow move past the window. "There's not much waiting for me there." Maya studied him, but did not ask. Northstar's first real opportunity arrived during a coastal storm. A regional pharmacy distributor had dozens of trucks carrying temperature-sensitive medicine toward areas expected to flood. The distributor's existing software showed no serious risk. Northstar predicted that 2 highway closures would isolate 3 counties within 12 hours. Daniel called the company's operations director. The man refused to reroute the vehicles. Daniel called again. Still no. On the 3rd call, Daniel offered a written guarantee. If we're wrong, you owe us nothing. And if you're right, you sign a 6-month contract. The director agreed. Northstar was right. By sunrise, the highways were underwater. The rerouted trucks reached 6 hospitals before the roads closed. 2 days later, the contract arrived. Daniel printed the first page and stared at the number. It was not enough to make them rich. It was enough to keep the lights on. Maya opened a bottle of cheap, sparkling wine. Theo found 4 paper cups. Lucas called Evelyn. Daniel stood by the window as his team celebrated. The city beyond the glass looked different. Not kinder. Not easier. Simply possible. His phone vibrated. A message from an unfamiliar number appeared. Daniel, I heard Northstar got a contract. Congratulations. Vanessa. He read it twice. He could almost hear her voice, careful and curious. He typed several replies and deleted them. At last, he wrote, "Thank you. Nothing more." Vanessa responded with a smiling face. Daniel turned the phone face down. Behind him, Maya lifted a paper cup. To being right earlier. Daniel raised his own. For the first time since the divorce, his smile did not feel borrowed from a life he had lost. Northstar did not become a billion-dollar company overnight. It rose through 1,000 mornings nobody photographed. There were no dramatic magazine covers in the beginning. Only invoices, server failures, airport floors, meals eaten from vending machines. Daniel flew economy, carried one suit, and slept with his laptop beneath his hand. He learned how to present to rooms filled with people who had already decided not to trust him. He learned that investors often use confidence as a disguise for fear. He learned that success did not silence doubt. It merely changed its vocabulary. First, they called Northstar unrealistic, then unproven, then too small, then dangerous, eventually indispensable. 3 years after the divorce, Northstar prevented a national retailer from losing nearly $80 million during a port shutdown. 6 months later, a global shipping corporation signed a contract. The office above the bakery became a glass building downtown. 3 employees became 40. 40 became 600. Daniel kept the original whiteboard. It hung inside his private office with the word earlier still visible beneath layers of faded marker. He also kept the old chair from the apartment. The one he had found beside the dumpster. It stood near the window, slightly uneven, facing the skyline. "You know you can afford furniture now," Maya told him. By then, she was Northstar's chief technology officer. Daniel looked at the chair. "I know." The press became interested in him after Northstar acquired a European analytics firm. Daniel refused most interviews. He disliked photographs and distrusted the polished mythology created around wealthy founders. Business magazines began calling him the invisible CEO. His name appeared everywhere. His face rarely did. When he attended negotiations, he entered through private offices before public events began. Photographers reused the same blurred image of him leaving a conference with his head turned away. Vanessa saw that photograph once. She paused for less than a second. The man's profile seemed familiar, but the caption read D. Cole, and the image was unclear. She kept scrolling. Her own life had moved quickly after the divorce. For a while, it looked exactly like the life she believed she deserved. Adrian Cross took her to private clubs, coastal villas, and restaurants where menus had no prices. He introduced her to people who spoke of ordinary salaries as though discussing weather in distant countries. Vanessa's photographs filled with chandeliers, champagne, and hotel balconies. But Adrian did not marry her. He did not remain faithful either. When Vanessa found another woman's earrings in his bedroom, she waited until dinner to confront him. Adrian cut into his steak without looking up. "We never promised each other permanence. I left my marriage for you." "No," Adrian said. "You left because you wanted a different life. I was simply standing near the door." The sentence cut more deeply than she admitted. Vanessa moved into a smaller apartment. She deleted dozens of photographs. She buried herself in work at Caldwell Urban Group, where she rose to vice president of strategic partnerships. From the outside, she still looked successful. Inside the company, The walls were beginning to crack. Caldwell had expanded too aggressively. Projects stalled. Debt increased. Senior executives resigned. A government investigation froze the company's largest development contract. By autumn, bankruptcy was no longer a rumor. It was a date approaching on a calendar. The board began searching for an investor. Only one company showed serious interest: Northstar Global. The technology group was expanding into infrastructure, transportation, and urban logistics. Caldwell executives spoke about Northstar's founder with near-religious caution. No one knew exactly what he intended. Few had met him. Negotiations were handled through attorneys and Maya Ortiz. The acquisition gala would be the first time Northstar's chief executive addressed Caldwell's leadership in person. Vanessa understood what the evening could mean. If Northstar completed the purchase, departments would be restructured. Executives would be reviewed. Some would remain. Most would not. For weeks, she prepared a presentation demonstrating her value. She updated her wardrobe, rehearsed answers, studied every article she could find about the invisible CEO. Age, 37. Background, private. Marital status, unknown. Estimated worth, nearly $4 billion. She found no clear photographs. Only silhouettes, side profiles, and one image taken from behind. The night before the gala, Vanessa stood in her apartment wearing a silver gown. She studied herself in the mirror. Perfect posture. Controlled expression. No visible fear. On the dresser lay a small velvet box. Inside was her old wedding ring. She had discovered it years earlier in a drawer while moving. Daniel had left it behind after signing the final papers. Vanessa had nearly thrown it away. For reasons she could not explain, she had kept it. She opened the box now. The diamond looked smaller than she remembered. The image of Daniel seated beneath the chandelier returned without warning. His repaired cuff. His untouched dinner. The way he had said silence kept him from becoming cruel. Vanessa closed the box. The following evening, she would meet one of the most powerful men in the country. She did not know that she had once shared a bed with him. She did not know she had watched him write the first lines of Northstar's code at their kitchen table. And she did not know that the man deciding whether she still had a career remembered every word she had said on the night she left him. Daniel received the gala invitation in his office on a gray Thursday morning. It was printed on heavy cream paper. At the bottom, beneath the names of Caldwell's board members, appeared Vanessa Cole, Vice President, Strategic Partnerships. Daniel stared at the name longer than he intended. Maya stood across from his desk. "We can send someone else," she said. Daniel placed the invitation down. "It's my acquisition. It's also your ex-wife's company. That doesn't change the numbers." "No," Maya said. "It changes the room." Rain moved down the windows behind him. For years, Daniel had imagined seeing Vanessa again. In some versions, he was angry. In others, indifferent. Sometimes she apologized. Sometimes he told her everything she had failed to understand. But imagined conversations belonged to the man he had been. The real moment felt quieter, more distant. Daniel picked up the acquisition report. Which departments are essential? Transportation analytics, planning, municipal partnerships. And strategic partnerships? Maya hesitated. "It depends on performance." "Then assess performance." "You won't interfere?" Daniel looked at her. "Would you trust me if I did?" Maya smiled faintly. "Yes." "You shouldn't." That afternoon, Daniel visited Evelyn Park. Her repair shop had moved to a larger building, though the old wooden counter remained near the entrance. Evelyn sat beneath a lamp, examining the inside of a tablet. "You're wearing a suit that costs more than my first house," she said. It was a small house. It was a perfectly respectable house. Daniel placed a paper bag on the counter. She opened it. Inside was a new laptop. Evelyn frowned. "My old one works. This one works faster." "So did you. I didn't replace you." Daniel laughed. Evelyn closed the device. "What's bothering you?" "Why does something have to be bothering me?" "You only bring expensive gifts when you're avoiding a conversation." Daniel looked toward the window. "Caldwell's gala is tomorrow." "The company you're buying?" He nodded. "She'll be there." Evelyn did not need to ask who. "Do you still love her?" Daniel considered the question. "I remember loving her." "That isn't the same thing." "No." "Do you hate her?" "No." Evelyn wiped her glasses. "Then perhaps you're ready." "For what?" "To meet the person she became without confusing her with the person you lost." The next evening, Daniel dressed alone in the penthouse he had purchased 2 years earlier. The rooms were spacious, quiet. and carefully designed. Yet he still owned little furniture. A home could become a museum to loneliness if one filled it only to impress visitors. Daniel fastened his cufflinks. They were simple brushed silver. No diamonds. No visible initials. He looked into the mirror. The man reflected there no longer carried apology in his posture. His hair was touched with gray at the temples. His face had sharpened with time. The old uncertainty in his eyes had been replaced by something calmer. Not pride. Ownership. He owned his decisions now. His failures. His future. A black car waited downstairs. As it moved through the city, Daniel watched familiar streets pass beneath winter lights. Then the Royal Crescent Hotel appeared. He had not known Caldwell's board had chosen it. For a moment, his chest tightened. The marble entrance. The awning. The windows where he had once stood in the rain with divorce papers inside his jacket. The driver opened the door. Camera flashes ignited across the pavement. Daniel stepped out. Reporters called questions. Mr. Cole, will the acquisition preserve Caldwell jobs? Is Northstar moving into public infrastructure? Will you address the board tonight? Daniel did not answer. Maya met him near the entrance. She wore a black suit and held a tablet against her side. You all right? She asked. Daniel looked through the glass. Beyond the lobby, chandeliers burned above the crowd. I've been here before. I know. He glanced at her. How? You named the hotel once after 3 glasses of whiskey. I don't drink whiskey. You did that night. The corner of his mouth moved. Then Daniel entered. Music floated above the conversations. Waiters carried champagne through clusters of executives. Caldwell's board. Members turned toward him with immediate recognition. Some straightened their jackets. Others extended both hands. Daniel greeted them without looking across the room. Not yet. He could feel the past waiting somewhere beneath the lights. Vanessa stood near the center of the ballroom, speaking with 2 directors. Her silver gown reflected the chandeliers. She was older, more composed, beautiful in a way sharpened by disappointment. Then she saw him. The color left her face for a moment. Daniel stopped. Across the room, the years between them narrowed. Vanessa's eyes moved over his suit, his posture, the people surrounding him. Confusion appeared first, then calculation. She excused herself and walked toward him. Daniel heard the soft rhythm of her heels. Daniel. He turned fully. Vanessa. She searched his face. What are you doing here? Before he could answer, a board member called his name from behind. Daniel glanced back. That brief interruption gave Vanessa time to build the explanation she preferred. Her expression softened into pity. Are you working for the event company? Daniel looked at her. She gestured toward his suit. It's just, I heard you left Brighton Freight. I assumed you moved into corporate hospitality or consulting. Maya stood several feet away and lowered her eyes. Daniel adjusted one cuff. I work in logistics. Vanessa smiled. The old smile. The one that appeared whenever she believed she understood his limits better than he did. I suppose some things never change. No, Daniel said quietly. Some things do. Vanessa looked toward Maya. You must be Daniel's supervisor. Maya extended her hand. Maya Ortiz. Vanessa's expression changed. She knew the name. Everyone at Caldwell knew it. Northstar's chief technology officer. Second only to the invisible CEO. Vanessa looked from Maya to Daniel. Oh, the single syllable carried surprise, but not understanding. You're consulting for Northstar? In a way. That's impressive. Her tone became warmer. Not respectful. Strategic. She touched his sleeve, lightly enough to appear accidental. I'm glad things improved for you. Daniel looked at her hand until she removed it. I heard about Adrian, he said. Vanessa's jaw tightened. People exaggerate. I'm sorry. She searched his face for satisfaction. There was none. That unsettled her more than mockery would have. Are you married? She asked. No, seeing someone? That seems personal. We were married 7 years. We were. The past tense hung between them. A group of Caldwell managers approached. One of them, Charles Whitmore, had attended the dinner where Vanessa ended the marriage. He was broader now, his hair thinner, but Daniel remembered the laugh he had hidden behind his napkin. Charles recognized him. Well, he said, Vanessa's famous dreamer. Charles. Charles glanced at the Northstar emblem. What brings you here? Did Vanessa finally get you an invitation? Several people smiled uncertainly. Vanessa looked embarrassed, but not for Daniel. For herself. Charles, she said, Daniel works with Northstar. Does he? Charles raised his eyebrows. Good for you. I suppose every empire needs someone tracking the delivery trucks. The managers laughed. Maya remained silent. Daniel could feel her anger. He gave her the smallest shake of his head. Not yet. Vanessa took a champagne glass from a passing tray. Daniel always had big ideas, she said. Unfortunately, big ideas don't always produce big results. The laughter came more easily this time. Daniel watched her. 5 years earlier, the words would have entered him like glass. Now they struck a surface already healed. What was the company called? Vanessa continued. North Point, North Wind, Northstar, Daniel said. Her smile paused. Charles chuckled. That's unfortunate. Vanessa looked toward the glowing emblem beside the stage. For the first time, uncertainty entered her eyes. You named your project Northstar? Yes. What happened to it? Daniel looked toward the stage. It became what it was supposed to become. Before Vanessa could respond, the music faded. The ballroom lights dimmed. Conversations dissolved into silence. A spotlight illuminated the stage. Caldwell's chairman, Richard Lawson, approached the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this historic evening. Applause moved through the room. Vanessa remained beside Daniel. Her glass was held close to her chest. Lawson spoke about Caldwell's history, its challenges, and the acquisition that would protect thousands of jobs. Daniel barely listened. He watched Vanessa's reflection in the dark surface of the window. She was looking at him now, not with pity, with the beginning of fear. For months, Lawson continued, our teams have negotiated with one of the most innovative companies of our generation. Tonight, we begin a new chapter under the leadership of a man whose technology transformed global transportation. Charles stopped smiling. Maya moved slightly away from Daniel, clearing a path toward the stage. Vanessa noticed. Her fingers tightened around the stem of her glass. Lawson lifted his voice. Please welcome the founder and chief executive officer of Northstar Global, the architect of tonight's $4 billion acquisition, Mr. Daniel Cole. The spotlight moved. It crossed the ballroom, past Charles, past Vanessa, and stopped on Daniel. For 1 second, nobody moved. Then the room erupted. Applause struck the walls. Caldwell's directors stood. Employees turned. Cameras flashed. Daniel remained beneath the light, without changing expression. Beside him, Vanessa's champagne glass trembled. A drop spilled across her hand. Charles's face had gone gray. Daniel began walking. The crowd opened before him. When he passed Vanessa, she whispered his name, not as a greeting, as though the word itself had become impossible. Daniel did not turn. He climbed the stairs and crossed the stage. Behind him, the screen changed. A portrait appeared. Clear. Unmistakable. Daniel Cole, founder and CEO, Northstar Global. The applause continued. Daniel reached the microphone. From the stage, he looked across hundreds of faces. Then he found Vanessa. She stood exactly where he had left her. The woman who once told him he would never become someone a woman could be proud of now stared upward at the man deciding the future of her company. Daniel placed both hands on the podium. 5 years ago, Northstar operated from a room above a bakery. The ballroom became still. We had 4 desks, 7 weeks of funding, and no reason to believe anyone would take us seriously. Maya smiled from the front row. But we believed information delivered early could prevent loss. Tonight, our responsibility is no different. His gaze moved across Caldwell's employees. This acquisition is not a celebration of power. It is a promise of stewardship. Companies are not buildings or logos. They are people who trusted leadership to see danger before it arrived. Several Caldwell executives lowered their eyes. We cannot change the decisions that brought this company to the edge, but we can decide what happens next. Daniel paused. We will preserve every position that serves the work rather than the ego of those above it. We will protect the teams that created value, and we will remove the systems that punished honesty. The applause began slowly, then grew. Vanessa did not join. She stood beneath the chandelier, holding the shaking glass. Daniel looked at her only once more. There was no triumph in his face. That was what broke her. Had he mocked her, she could have hated him. Had he displayed anger, she could have called him bitter. But Daniel looked at her as one looks at a closed door in a building no longer owned. Without longing, without rage, without any intention of returning. The following morning, the acquisition review began. Every Caldwell executive was required to present financial results, team evaluations, and strategic value. No one was automatically dismissed. No one was automatically protected. Daniel insisted on evidence. Vanessa entered the Northstar conference room at 9:30 carrying a leather portfolio. She had slept less than 2 hours. The city was pale beyond the windows. Daniel sat at the head of the table. Maya occupied the chair beside him. 2 attorneys and 3 department heads reviewed digital files. Vanessa stopped near the door. For a moment, neither she nor Daniel spoke. Then he gestured toward the empty chair. "Please sit." His professional tone hurt more than anger. Vanessa placed her portfolio on the table. She had prepared for weeks, yet every sentence now felt rehearsed for the wrong audience. Her presentation began well. She explained Caldwell's municipal relationships, ongoing contracts, and future opportunities. Daniel listened without interruption. He took notes. He asked precise questions. He did not embarrass her. He did not mention the gala. 20 minutes into the presentation, Maya displayed performance data. Vanessa's department had secured major partnerships. It had also concealed delays, inflated forecasts, and pressured junior analysts to remove negative projections from reports. Daniel looked at the screen. Who approved these revisions? Vanessa's mouth became dry. They were collaborative decisions. Whose signature authorized them? Silence. Daniel turned toward her. Yours? Vanessa lowered her eyes. Yes. Why? The board was demanding growth. If we presented the raw projections, several projects would have lost financing. Were the projections accurate? Yes. So you had accurate information because the truth was inconvenient. Vanessa looked at him. The irony stood between them. I was trying to protect the company. From reality? From panic. Daniel closed the report. Panic caused by truth is manageable. Collapse caused by deception is not. One attorney made a note. Vanessa's hands tightened beneath the table. Are you going to fire me? Daniel looked at Maya. Maya slid another file forward. Your department will be dissolved, she said. Its essential functions will move into operations. Most employees will be reassigned. And me? Daniel answered. You'll be offered a 6-month advisory contract during the transition. Vanessa stared at him. That's all. It's more than several executives will receive. Her composure broke. After everything between us, this is how you handle my career? Daniel's expression remained calm. I handled your career the same way I handled every career review today. You expect me to believe that? Yes. Because you're suddenly above revenge? No, the quietness of his voice stopped her. Because revenge would require me to make you more important than the company. The room became silent. Vanessa's eyes filled, but she refused to blink. Daniel looked toward the others. Give us a moment. Maya studied him, then stood. The room emptied. When the door closed, Vanessa remained seated. The city stretched behind Daniel in glass and steel. You could have warned me, she said. About the acquisition? About who you were. You knew who I was. You know what I mean. Daniel leaned back. No, Vanessa. I don't think you knew who I was then. And you never asked who I became. She looked at the table. I sent you a message after your first contract. You did. You barely answered. You congratulated me the way someone congratulates a child for finishing a small project. That isn't fair. Perhaps not. His lack of aggression left her nowhere to defend herself. Vanessa stood and walked toward the window. Adrian left me. I know. He said I never loved him. He said I only loved what standing beside him made people think of me. Daniel said nothing. Vanessa turned. Was he right? That isn't a question I can answer. You were my husband, and he was the man you chose. She closed her eyes. I made a mistake. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Yes. The simplicity of the answer struck harder than accusation. I thought you had given up, she said. I had. She looked at him. Not on Northstar, Daniel continued. On myself. His gaze moved to the old whiteboard mounted on the side wall. I spent years making your dreams practical while treating mine like an indulgence. That was my decision. I can't blame you for all of it. Vanessa's voice softened. But you blame me for leaving. No, then what do you blame me for? Daniel's eyes returned to hers. The contempt. She became still. You didn't leave because I had no future, he said. You left because you couldn't imagine a future you didn't already recognize. A tear moved down Vanessa's cheek. She wiped it away. I was scared. So was I. I wanted security. So did I. I didn't know what Northstar would become. Neither did I. His voice remained gentle. That was the point. Vanessa looked at him as though seeing the years between them all at once. The late nights. The rejected program. The old laptop. The meals he cooked while she studied. The repaired jacket. The ring beneath the chandelier. You should hate me, she whispered. Daniel's expression softened. I did for a while. What changed? I became too busy building a life your opinion couldn't enter. Vanessa accepted the advisory contract. For 6 months, she worked from a smaller office on the 12th floor. Her title disappeared from the door. Her private assistant was reassigned. The executive elevator no longer recognized her access card. No one mocked her. That made the change harder. She began arriving earlier. She reviewed reports without changing conclusions. For the first time in years, she listened when junior employees disagreed. Daniel rarely visited her floor. When he did, he was surrounded by decisions and people who looked at him with the respect she had once believed he would never earn. Yet he did not seem intoxicated by power. He ate lunch with engineers. He remembered security guards' names. When an intern spilled coffee across a presentation minutes before a board meeting, Daniel helped clean the table himself. The contrast unsettled Vanessa. She had told herself that wealth transformed people. Daniel's wealth had only revealed what had been there all along. One evening in late winter, she found him alone in the old conference room, standing before the whiteboard marked earlier. The office had mostly emptied. Snow pressed against the windows. You kept it, she said. Daniel turned. The board. The word. He looked at the faded letters. It reminds me what the company is for. Vanessa stepped closer. And the chair in your office? He glanced at her. You noticed. It doesn't match anything. It came from my first apartment after the divorce. Her face tightened. The apartment above the laundromat. You knew about it? I drove past once. Daniel said nothing. I didn't stop, she continued. I saw the light in the upstairs window. It was after midnight. You were with Adrian then. Yes. The word was barely audible. I told myself you were working because you couldn't accept reality. I thought you were refusing to move on. I was moving on. I know that now. Snow blurred the city. Vanessa opened her handbag and removed the velvet box. She placed it on the conference table. Daniel recognized it immediately. I found this when I moved, she said. He opened the box. Her wedding ring lay inside. For a moment, the hotel returned around them. The chandelier, the cold food, the envelope. Daniel closed the box. Why did you keep it? Vanessa looked toward the window. At first, because I thought it had value. A humorless smile crossed her face. Later, because it reminded me of the last time someone loved me before I became difficult to love. Daniel studied her. You were not difficult to love. Her eyes lifted. You were difficult to reach. The distinction wounded her more gently. I thought success would make me feel safe, she said. Then I thought Adrian would. Then the title. Then the salary. Every time I reached something, I needed the next thing before I could breathe. Daniel rested one hand on the table. And now I think I was standing inside a life that loved me, demanding proof that it was impressive enough. She looked at him. I'm sorry. Daniel had imagined those words for years. In the apartment above the laundromat. On airport floors. During nights when Northstar's servers failed. In his imagination, the apology always brought relief. The real one brought only quiet. I believe you, he said. Vanessa's breath caught. Do you? Yes. Does that change anything? No, she looked down. Daniel did not enjoy the disappointment that crossed her face. That mattered to him. But it did not change the answer. I don't know how to repair what I did, she said. You can't repair the marriage. Her eyes filled again. But you can repair the part of yourself that believed another person's value depended on how impressive they looked beside you. Vanessa gave a broken laugh. You make it sound simple. It won't be. He moved the velvet box back toward her. You should keep this. I thought you might want it. Daniel looked at the ring. It belonged to a promise we both stopped keeping. Vanessa closed her hand around the box. I never stopped thinking about you. Daniel's gaze was steady. Thinking about someone is not the same as choosing them. She had no answer. In early spring, Vanessa's advisory contract ended. Northstar offered her a permanent position, not as a vice president, as director of municipal compliance, reporting to a woman who had once worked beneath her. Vanessa accepted. When Daniel heard, he only nodded. She's qualified, Maya said. I know. You could have blocked it. I know. Maya looked at him. You've changed. Daniel turned toward the skyline. I hope so. No. I mean, you've stopped measuring every decision against the man you were when she left. Daniel considered that. Maybe I finally believe he wasn't weak. Maya smiled. He built the company. No, Daniel said. He survived long enough for me to build it. That summer, Northstar completed the Caldwell transition without mass layoffs. The company's strongest divisions were preserved. Its most dishonest systems were removed. Thousands of employees kept their jobs. Daniel's photograph appeared on magazine covers despite his objections. One article called him ruthless. Another called him visionary. He read neither. On a warm evening in June, Northstar held a small anniversary gathering on the roof of its headquarters. There were no chandeliers, no television crews, only employees, paper lanterns, and music playing softly beneath the open sky. Evelyn Park stood near the railing with a glass of lemonade. "You finally bought furniture," she said when Daniel approached. "Most of it. Still have that terrible chair?" "Yes." "Good." Below them, the city glowed. Maya raised a glass and called for everyone's attention. 10 years ago, for people worked above a bakery and argued about whether the ceiling stain was growing. "It was growing," Theo said from the crowd. Laughter moved across the roof. Maya continued. "We built technology because we believed people deserved the truth before it became too late to act." Her eyes found Daniel. But companies are built from more than technology. They are built from the moment someone decides not to quit. Evelyn looked at Daniel. He looked away. When the toast ended, he moved toward the edge of the roof. A woman stood there watching the lights. Elena Marlowe had joined Northstar's legal team the previous year. She was intelligent, calm, and unimpressed by wealth. They had begun having coffee after late meetings. Nothing dramatic. Nothing rushed. She turned when he approached. "You hate speeches about yourself," she said. "Deeply. Your face made that clear. I thought I looked grateful. You looked trapped." Daniel smiled. Elena handed him a glass of water. "Vanessa came tonight." He followed her gaze. Near the elevator, Vanessa stood speaking with several colleagues. She wore a simple navy dress. No diamonds. No performance. She saw Daniel and offered a small nod. He returned it. There was no bitterness in the gesture. No invitation either. Only recognition. Two people acknowledging the distance between what they had been and what they had become. Elena watched him. "Are you all right?" "Yes." He realized it was true. Later, after the guests left, Daniel returned to his office. The old chair remained near the window. He sat in it and looked at the city. For years, he believed success would transform the memory of the hotel dinner. He imagined becoming powerful enough that Vanessa's words could no longer hurt him. But power had not erased the wound. Time had not erased it either. What changed was simpler. Daniel stopped treating the worst opinion anyone had ever held of him as a definition. He stopped building his life as an argument. He stopped waiting for the past to admit it had been wrong. On his desk lay a photograph of the original Northstar team above the bakery. Maya stood with a paper cup raised above her head. Theo looked annoyed by the camera. Lucas was laughing. Daniel stood beside the whiteboard, thinner and exhausted, wearing a shirt with one missing button. He studied the man in the photograph. That man did not look like a billionaire. He did not look powerful. He looked tired, afraid, uncertain. But he had shown up the next morning. And the morning after that, Daniel touched the edge of the frame. The office door opened. Elena leaned inside. "Are you coming?" "Where?" "Dinner. You agreed 3 hours ago." "I did." "You were pretending to listen during Maya's speech." Daniel stood. Elena glanced at the chair. "One day, you'll have to tell me why you keep that thing." "One day." She waited by the door. Daniel turned off the lights. The office went dark except for the city beyond the glass. For a moment, his reflection appeared in the window. The repaired jacket was gone. The old apartment was gone. The man beneath the hotel chandelier was gone too. But Daniel did not despise him anymore. That man had remained silent when cruelty would have been easier. He had carried a broken laptop through the ring. He had built a future without knowing whether anyone would ever recognize it. And he had learned the lesson success could never have taught him. The best revenge was not making Vanessa regret leaving. It was reaching a place where her regret no longer decided his peace. Daniel walked toward the door. Elena smiled. "Ready?" He looked once more at the photograph on his desk. "Yes." Together, they stepped into the hallway. The elevator doors opened. Daniel entered without looking back. He had not become successful to win his ex-wife again. He had become successful when he finally chose himself.